Good afternoon, participants, and welcome to the second session of our training program entitled The Journey, Exploring and Learning Campus Journalism. This is your resource person for this afternoon, Ramonito Elumbaring, and I'm going to discuss the basic news writing. So our session will focus on the following topics. What are school news, sources of school news, the different news gathering methods, the types of news structure, the basic structure of news, writing news headlines, writing the lead, writing the body of the story, the suggested format in news writing, the story deconstruction, or analyzing news stories, and of course our best practice using the news story planner. So let's start. When you talk about school news, it actually includes reports on, first, money or the utilization of school funds. Everything about money is interesting. So if we're talking about, let's say, how much is the MOOE of your school, how your school spends the MOOE, that would be a good article for your school paper. Or if we're talking about how money is spent by the PTA, for example, or the different organizations in your school. Okay, even if you have special programs, for example, and the DepEd has allotted funds for it, then that would also be a good article for your school paper. The second one is enrollment. So whether your enrollment increase or decrease by how many percent, that would also be a good addition to your news page. And then we have facility improvements. When we're talking about facility improvement, that refers to repairs or purchase, for example, of new equipment for classroom use, or maybe there are new buildings in your school. That would be part of this facility improvements. And then we have students' safety. Okay, so if let's say, for example, your school has tightened the security because there are school incidents happening inside the school, that would also be a good article for your story or for your news page. And then if we're talking about, let's say, addition of new security guards or the installation of CCTV in your school, that is also part of students' safety. And then we have awards recognition, be it municipal or citywide or division-wide, regional, national, or much more if it is an international award or recognition. And then we also have innovations in teaching strategies. So of course, you know that we are in the 21st century and there are a lot of innovations that teachers are doing inside their classrooms. So it might as well merit an article in the news page. And then we have PTA programs and projects. So if your PTA is active in the school and they have conducted programs or they have actually funded projects, that would also be a good addition to your news page. And then we have routinary activities. Although these are activities that we've been doing yearly or annually, but it would be better if you give it a fresh angle. So let's say instead of just saying conducted or hosted or organized, why not focus on what happened? Okay, what happened in the activity, how did it impact the students, rather than focus on who conducted it, or why was it conducted. And then school problems. Of course, there are a lot of problems that every school is facing. So let's say, for example, in our school, our problems are vandalism, bullying. We have also theft incidents. So perhaps in your school you also have some school problems that you can highlight in the news page, not actually to put the school down or to damage the reputation of the school, but to make the stakeholders aware that indeed there are problems that need to be solved inside the school. So another one is new ICT integration platforms. There are actually a lot of online websites or platforms that teachers can use in the classroom. Remember, part of the 21st century teaching and learning would be to incorporate ICT. And it's not just about using computers or laptops or LCD projectors, but also making use of Web 2.0 tools that will allow more engagements, more collaboration mediated by technology. And then we have updates on teachers' school tasks. This is actually for public school teachers who are very much burdened with so many school tasks. Okay, so like for example, having to use the DLL or the daily lesson log, the e-class records, the accomplishment of the different school forms, okay, and then other ancillary tasks. And then we have also new teachers and employees. So those new additions to the roster of faculty or to the administrative staff could be featured in your school paper. I guess it would be interesting not only to them but also to your students, so that everybody will be aware that there are new teachers and new employees hired by the school. And then issues affecting teachers. So it's not just about students, but we can also feature or write about issues affecting the teachers, like for example their salary, their working conditions. And then the impact story of new policies cascaded by DepEd. From time to time, DepEd issues memorandum or orders that will affect not only the teachers and employees, but much more the students. So if there are new policies that will affect, for example, the students' conditions in terms, for example, of curriculum, in terms of extracurricular activities, computation of grades or the honor system, and other policies that they are crafting. And then we have the dropout reduction program. So this is common this is actually being practiced in public schools. So schools are actually crafting policies, programs that will lessen the dropout rate. So you can write whether the program was effective or not. And then senior high school updates. So there are a lot of things happening in senior high school. the tracks, the different tracks, and the how do you call that, strand. What are the problems perhaps of senior high school students that they encounter? Not only the students, but you can also write about teachers who are teaching in the senior high school. And then of course the career path, that right after senior high, where are they going to go? Okay. And then we have survey in school-wide issues. So you can again conduct a survey to the students with the hot issues, wherein you need to get the pulse of the students. So perhaps you can survey, for example, 10% of the population, and then put that as a survey news in your school paper. That survey news should be accompanied by infographics. And then honor roll. I guess students would be excited to see their names on paper if they are part of the honor roll. You can publish that, include that in your school paper, and that will motivate them to exert more effort. Next, we have visiting personages. So there are personalities, high profile, who are visiting the school. They could be DepEd officials, they could be actors or actresses, or they could be politicians. Now, if you're going to write an article about visiting personages, the focus should not be on the person, but it should be on the purpose of the visit. And then we have the out of school activity. So included here are tours, like for example, library tour or museum tour, or if the school conducted a field trip. School community partnership. So at this point, there are a lot of collaboration between the school and the community in terms of how they can improve the conditions of the students. There are also private individuals who are investing in school. So like for example, in public schools, we have what you call Adapt a School. They have or Adapt a Classroom. And then during Brigada Escuela, they're even helping clean and prepare the school for the opening of classes. And then even in the conduct of fun run, for example, or if there are fundraising activities, the school always tap the community for partnership. And then we have community news that matter to readers. This refers to the local, political, social, and economic news. So your school paper should not just be confined to the four corners of the class or four corners of the school, but you should also go out and look for stories that have impact to the school, to the stakeholders. Okay, and then we have alumni's achievements. So though they are already graduates of the school, but you can always claim what they have achieved. Like for example, if they become board top-notchers, or if they won in international competitions, or if they become appointed to high positions in the government. Okay, so now let's proceed to the sources of school news. So these are the people whom you should interview, whom you should be asking for information. So we start with the principal or head teachers and the department heads. Of course, the principal knows what is happening in the school. He or she is the one who implements policies in the school, and he or she is also the one cascading new policies from the central or from the regional and division offices. So the principal would also know the different programs that he or she wants to implement for the school year. And if there are new policies, you can always interview the principal for his or her reaction. And then advisors and officers of the school organizations. If you have a lot of school organizations and they are very active, you can always ask for their plan of action for the school year. What have they accomplished? What are the activities that they're going to conduct in the coming weeks and months? And then we have teachers. Of course, you can always interview them if they have attended seminars or conferences, or if they are conducting, for example, action research, or if they are doing innovations inside the classroom. And then the guidance office. So the first thing that comes to our mind when we talk about guidance office would be school violations. Okay? But there are also career guidance programs that the guidance office is providing to students. And aside from that, you can also interview them regarding enrollment. Because in public schools, I think the guidance office is the one in charge of the enrollment. And then school clinic. So if you're talking about the nutritional status of the students, you can always go to your school nurse and interview him or her about the health conditions of the students. And for public schools, for example, there are a lot of vaccinations being done. So you can as well get data from the school clinic about it. And then we have PTA officers. Again, if your PTA is active, you can always interview them regarding their plans, their projects, and you can also ask them about the different school issues since they are parents. Barangay and local officials. So for community news, you can interview them. You can also ask for documents or copies of resolutions, for example, especially those impacting the school. And then we have school calendar. So DepEd is releasing a school calendar every year. You can see there the important dates, the different activities, and even holidays for the school year. And then we have bulletin board notices. In some schools, you can always see updates of the different organizations, of the different departments in the bulletin board. So you might as well you might be able to stumble some newsworthy articles in those bulletin boards. And then DepEd orders and memoranda. It's a must that news reporters should be able to look for DepEd orders and memoranda that impact the stakeholders. There are a lot of policies being cascaded by DepEd that are newsworthy. Okay, it may be related to the curriculum. It may be related to learning resources. It may also be related to issues being confronted by the different stakeholders. Then we have press releases. So a lot or most government agencies would issue press releases. Even DepEd also provides the media with press releases, and they could be a source of school news. Okay, narrative and financial reports. The different organizations, the different departments in the school provide narrative and financial reports to the school head, and the reporter or the news writer can actually ask for these reports, and this can be good sources of news. And then national or local newspapers and magazines. So why duplicate if they were already printed or published? No, you're not going to do that, but rather you can localize what has been published in the national and local newspaper and magazines so that it would be relevant to your readers. And then you can also get some information from radio and television. Okay, and then surveys. You can conduct surveys in the school if you want to know the pulse of the students on certain issues. And then last, we have social media. I think the fastest way of knowing something would be through social media. Before it is aired on TV, before it's published in the paper the following day, you can first read it in the social media. Now you can also use the social media for crowdsourcing. So if you want to know certain information, you can just post on your social networking site such as Facebook, and your connection, your network would be giving replies or comments. Now let's proceed with the news gathering, or the different methods that journalists use in gathering data or information. So the first one is the actual coverage of the event or happening. Of course, the journalist or the news writer should be in the event, okay, as it happens, when it happens. So he or she should be taking notes of what has transpired in the event, so that he or she would be able to write those info in the story. Okay, it's not enough that you will just have to ask someone what happened. You as the reporter should be there. Then, of course, interview. Although you might have covered the event, but it would be better if you can get the reaction of the people involved in the story. We're not just talking about those who were personally involved, but you can even interview the audience, okay, and ask for their reaction. Remember that in a news story, it's always a must that you have a quote, and a quote would always come from an interview or a speech. And then the other one is writing from documents. So if you have copy of speeches, if you have the copy of the program or the invitation, you should be able to download the memo or the document. So that would be better, okay? Because those are actually a rich source of information. And you can also do some readings or research, especially if you're looking for background on the assigned story. You can read past issues of the newspaper, or you can conduct online research, and maybe it will give you something about the story you're writing. And then last, you can also conduct a survey. So if you were assigned to write about the pulse of the students regarding a certain issue, you really need to do sampling and ask them about the hot issue in the school. That would be a break in the monotony of straight news and event-based stories in your news page. And then let's proceed now to the types of news structure. Basically, there are just two types of news structure. Now, in our school paper, most of the stories that we have are straight news. Actually, we have around 95% of news articles that are considered straight news. So when we talk about straight news, they consist of facts given directly, as the name implies, straight. So it's given directly. There are no embellishments, no beating around the bush. And then second, we have the main aim, which is to inform. Okay. Third, we have straight news being characterized as a straightforward reporting of the 5 W's and 1 H, or the 5 wives and 1 husband, referring to who, what, where, when, why, and how. Then, the straight news follows the inverted pyramid structure, which I am going to discuss a little later. And then it makes use of the summary lead. So this is an example of a straight news. So if you will read this story, you're going to see that the 6th paragraph article gives you the highlights of the story. It gives you the answers to your 5 W's and 1 H. If you will look at the lead, it makes use of the summary lead. It also, or all the facts are given straight, without embellishments. There are no beating around the bush. Okay, so these are the 3 remaining paragraphs of the straight news. Now, by the way, this article is what we call event-based story, because this story was written, of course, from an event that took place, which is the National Schools Press Conference, wherein the Coconut won as the 6th best. And then here's another straight news. Now, this news story is what we call an issue-based story. Why? Because this story came up with the conflict regarding the 6-hour workday. So there was what you call an agreement between the school admin and the teachers regarding the 6-hour workday, and this was written in this article. So how was this article written? It was written from interviews with the principal, with our administrative officer, and then we even asked the reaction of the teachers about it. So this is a little bit harder compared to the event-based stories. And if you have noticed, this is also a little longer because there are a lot of people that you should be interviewing to get both sides of the story. Okay, so now let's go to the news feature. So a news feature, meanwhile, is still a news and it's not a feature article. Okay, you might be thinking that it's classified or considered a feature article, but no, it's still a news. So what's the difference between a news feature and a regular feature article? A news feature has the element of timeliness, while a feature article is considered timeless. So meaning it's not perishable. But a news feature, if you're not going to publish it now, it becomes history already. Okay? So the difference lies on the issue of the issue of timeliness. And then we have news feature as based on facts, but it entertains more. So a news feature is not an essay. It's not a literary article. It should still be based on real events. It should still be based on real people, but there is some element of entertainment on it because it appeals more on the emotion rather than on the intellect. So it uses the suspended interest structure. So if the straight news makes use of the inverted pyramid, the news feature uses the opposite. So it has the element of a narrative wherein you can have the climax at the end of the paragraph or the story, where you really need to read the entire story to understand it. Unlike in straight news, once you read the first paragraph, you already know what the whole article is about. So it presents the background and goes beyond the usual W's. So it gives you more. So you do not just scratch the surface, but you have to dig deeper. Okay? So it's not just simply answering the 5 W's and 1 H. And then it has more human interest side. Just like what I said earlier, it appeals to the heart. Okay, there's drama in a news feature. And then last, it uses the novelty lead. So given more time, I would have wanted to discuss with you the different types of novelty lead, but that would be too long because there are different and there are a lot of kinds of novelty lead. So this is an example of a news feature. This article is about our former editor winning the most outstanding campus journalist award in the National Schools Press Conference. So if you will notice, the first paragraph is not a summary, but it's actually a quote from him. So remember, a news feature uses the novelty lead, and quotation lead is one of them. But in the second paragraph, it gives you the news peg. It explains why he said that, or why he quoted, or why he said that it could be a stroke of luck or the answer to a prayer. And then if you will look at the succeeding paragraphs, this is more of getting to know him. Okay? And there are a lot of quotes, there are a lot of information giving background about the person being featured in this article. So it talks more about his experience, his feelings, and his plan. Okay, so now let's proceed to the basic structure of news. So when we write news, we place the most important essentials in the beginning, then we write the facts in decreasing order of importance. So hence, we have the term inverted pyramid. So this is the structure of the inverted pyramid. So you will see that the information are clustered, and it's actually divided into 4 components. We have the primary or the main lead, the secondary or support lead, then we have the details or particular, and then we have the background. So what are the different components of the inverted pyramid structure? So first we have the primary or the main lead. It's usually a single paragraph, and not only a single paragraph, but the paragraph is only composed of one sentence. And it contains usually the 4 W's: the who, what, where, and when. Now, in the AP style or the Associated Press style, they have who, what, and so what. Now, when you talk about so what, that refers to the why. Okay? Now, in some instances, the main lead or the primary lead could also just be who or what. Now, this is followed by the secondary or support lead. So this one explains or complements the main or the primary lead. Sometimes, or most of the sometimes it's composed of 2 paragraphs or twice the length of the paragraph, but there are also instances that it's just 1 paragraph. Now, the third is the details or particulars. Now, of course, it gives flesh to the story because all the things that you did not mention in the lead will be given here. Okay? And in this part, you particularly answer the questions why, and how. And then, lastly, we have the background. So, the background gives relevant past events. Sometimes you relate it to what has already been published so that the issue or the topic becomes clearer. And this part of the story may be deleted. We have what you call the cut-off test. And the first paragraph that will be deleted in the story would be the background. Okay, so here's a sample story of a news following the components of the inverted pyramid. So first, let us study the facts. So the principal of A. Bonifacio High School appeals for financial support from both parents and teachers for the completion of the annex building. The annex building has not been completed because of lack of funds. So here we go. So the suggested primary or main lead. So the principal of A. Bonifacio High School appealed for financial support from both parents and teachers for the completion of a new building in the campus in a symposium last August 10. Now, in this primary lead, you can see that it answers 4 W's. Who, principal of A. Bonifacio High School. What, appealed for financial support. Where, in a symposium. And then when, last August 10. So now let's proceed to the suggested support lead. The school principal, Mr. Adalberto Arsenal, made the appeal during a 1-hour symposium at the school's gymnasium attended by teachers, senior high school students, and their parents. Mr. Arsenal talked about the need to finish the annex building so that it can accommodate more students in the next opening of classes. So as you can see, the support lead is twice as long as the main or primary lead, and these 2 paragraphs succeeded, or these 2 paragraphs or 2 succeeding paragraphs actually complement or help explain the main lead. And then we have the details or particulars. So just like what we said earlier, it gives flesh to the story. So all the things that were not mentioned in the previous paragraphs are all given here. Okay, so we actually have 3 paragraphs for the details or particulars. And then last, we have the background. So here, you are given the information about the building and why its construction has been stopped. So right now, the reader will now have a clearer idea of why there is an appeal for financial support made by the school principal, which is found or given in the first paragraph. So now let's proceed to the writing of the headlines. So there are guidelines that you need to remember in writing the headlines. I hope that you will bear with me because this is a bit long. There are actually 19 in these slides. So the first one is the head should tell the gist of the story simply and accurately. So if the first paragraph of a straight news summarize the whole story, the headline of a straight news should summarize the lead. Okay, for example, Quezon National High School SPED program gets 159,000 fund from DepEd. So upon reading the headline, you will already know what the story is about. Okay, the second one, the first letter of the first word and proper nouns are generally capitalized. So if you will notice in this headline, we have the proper nouns PTA and then Babylonia, which are capitalized. And then of course, the first word new was also capitalized. And then you have to make use of the historical present if the verb is in the active voice. Okay, so like for example, in this headline, grade 10 teachers undergo assessment focused training on K to 12. So the verb here, undergo, is in the historical present. So what do you mean by that? Although the event already happened, but the verb makes use of the base form of the verb. Another one is Reyes Tops editorial tilt. Tops is also in the historical present form. And then number 4, you have to omit the helping verb if the verb is in the passive voice. So only the past participle is retained. Okay, for example, drug pushers are nubbed. So you omit the helping verb are and just retain the verb nabbed. Then number 5, you have to use the infinitive for future events. So for example, City Hall to punish anti-squatting drive. You don't say will punish or is going to punish, but you use the infinitive to punish. The same thing with the second one, Quezon Province to host Palarong Pambansa in 2021. Okay, so this is an example of the passive form of headlining. So 2 billion for flood control okayed. So you drop the helping verb was. The same thing with the headline adjacent to it, National Artist Honor for Makuha urged. You also dropped the helping verb was. Okay, number 6, avoid the use of articles a and the to begin a headline. So you have an example here. So it's wrong to say a fire hits Lucena slum area. Instead, you should write fire hits Lucena slum area. Do you drop the a? Never use the word may because it shows uncertainty in the story. So for example, PH may host 2023 FIBA World Cup. And then for assertions or opinions in a headline, they should have sources. Say for example, no speaker, no sauna. So who said that? House opposition. And then who said that ST is in peril? So a law expert said it. Or law experts have said it. And then number 9, don't convert verbs into noun. So for example, you have students urge ousting of the principal. So it doesn't sound good. Rather, you should say, or you should write, students urge to oust the principal. Okay, use the shorter word whenever possible. Say for example, cut for decrease, hike for increase. Now this actually entails what you call knowledge in headline vocabulary. There are actually a list of headline vocabulary that you can memorize perhaps. So you just have to consult journalism books like the one written by Siciliano Cruz and the one written by Alito Malinaw. So they will provide you with a lot of shorter words that you can use for long forms. So we have an example here. Government hikes oil prices. So instead of using increase, you use hikes. Instead of using decrease, you use cuts. Okay, be specific and avoid generalities. So it's wrong to say student wins contest, but rather you should say caucus scribe, referring to the student. And then instead of saying contest, you should be more specific by writing national essay writing tilt. And then you have to avoid label head. This is a big no-no in news writing. When you talk about label head, it refers to just the topic or the subject. So let's say journalism workshop. So instead of saying journalism workshop, it's better to write the coconut conducts journalism workshop. So if you will notice, the second one actually follows a pattern: subject, verb, and then the object. So it's no longer a label head. And then do not editorialize your headline. Say for example, the coconut shows great performance in 2018 DSPC. So this is actually opinionating. So you have to be factual. Although, yeah, they might have shown great performance, but you have to avoid editorializing. So it's better to say the coconut wins 6 out of 7 in 2018 DSPC writing contest. Then we have do not use the same word twice in the headline or kicker. Let's say you have the word whole and the word sees. So the word whole was no longer repeated in the headline. So by the way, when you say kicker, this is a short phrase that you put on top of the headline that explains or adds info to your headline. So in the headline, in the kicker here, the word whole was not repeated. So to use a direct quotation as head, you can use any of the following forms. We have 1, using the dash instead of the quotation mark. Sanctity of marriage dash CBCP. So as you can see, the quote was not put in quotation marks. Second, by using the colon. So the person who said it, then colon, and then the quoted statement. So Briones, colon, PPST is the yardstick of quality. And then last, we have using narrative form. Example, teachers need help but not hopeless, says Briones. Okay, another one. Do not be in the negative. Okay, example, Nyug-Nyugan Festival won't be held. So it doesn't look good if you're going to make use of the words not. Okay, the correct way of doing it is Nyug-Nyugan Festival canceled. So perhaps you have to look for a word that would mean the same, but do not use the word not in the headline. Then have a subject and a verb. Avoid starting with the verb. The headline might sound as if it were giving orders. Say for example, it's wrong to say revise policy on securing admission slips. Okay? It sounds as if you're trying to ask someone to do something. Rather, you should say Guidance Office revises policy on securing admission slips. Okay, use widely known abbreviations. Example, PRRD visits LC. You might know what PRRD means but not LC because it means Lucena City. So it might only be popular in a certain place So it's better that when you use abbreviations, make sure that it's universal. Okay, use comma instead of and in writing headlines. Say for example, teachers and barangay officials revive bayanihan brigada eskwela. Instead of using and, so you replace it with a comma. Okay, now let's have writing the lead. Okay, so let us first define and characterize what a lead is. So it's the story's opening sentence or two, although I would prefer just one sentence. Tells the most important facts of the story, referring to the lead in a straight news. And then it could be a word, a phrase, a sentence, or a paragraph that attracts and sustain the reader's interest. This is in the case of feature articles or news feature. Now, these are the technical requirements of the lead. So it should be one sentence. It should be a maximum of 25 to 35 words. And it should tell the most important piece of information that occurred in the event, especially when you're writing straight news. Now, another thing. It contains the main who, what, and where of the story. I think I forgot the word when there. It should be direct and simple, or it should be direct and simple, especially in straight news. It should have the most important information, as what we said before. The lead summarizes the whole story. And then it should not try to tell everything, but should be good summaries, because the how and the why can still be discussed in the body. And then it should include specific information. Unlike in feature articles, you can be abstract. But in news, it should be specific. Okay, not begin with the when element, because it rarely happens that a date is important. You also need to use a strong verb to describe the action, like calls, urge, and other verbs that you are using in headlining and in writing the lead. Okay, and above all else, you should be accurate. Okay, there's no room for mistake in writing the news, more so in writing the lead. Okay, these are sample leads from the issue of our school paper. So example 1, school authorities have intensified security measures to address concerns following the increasing rate of raucous and theft incidents in the first few weeks after the school opening. Okay, so this was actually the lead of our banner story regarding tightening the security measures amid brawls and theft incidents in the school. Second, the number of dropout students in Quezon National High School posted a 17% decline last school year, the guidance office reported. So as you can see, this is a very short lead paragraph that gives us the gist, the summary of the whole story. So you already have an idea what the entire article is all about. And then number 3, Quezon National High School will offer senior high school specialized tracks to accommodate its almost 1,800 grade 10 completers by school year 2018-2019. Then this one is a news about the MOOE. More than 3 million of the school's maintenance and operating expenses for fiscal year 2017 is allotted for school facilities Electricity and water expenses, according to Mr. Edmundo Marin Jr., the school accountant disclosed. So sometimes it's also better that you attribute, okay, where you got the assertions or the statements. Okay, so we have here about the completion or the near completion of the computer laboratories. We have here the reminder of the principal to all the canteens to adhere to policies imposed on school canteens. So we have here a lead paragraph on the students who took up the remediation program. And then here we have a story about the revision of the student handbook. 9, we have here a story about the agreement of the school or the agreement between the teachers and the admin regarding the 6-hour workday. And then last, we have here a story of the reactions given by the students regarding the random drug testing. Okay, so now you're ready to write the body. So after you have written the lead, of course you need to introduce other elements. So this could be crucial information, this could be supportive information or repetitive information that you already mentioned in the previous paragraphs. So the body of the story will of course give additional facts. These are actually elaboration of the things you already mentioned in the lead. It gives also the background so that the story becomes clearer to the readers. You can also add quotes to the story, because the story will not stand unless you have quotes. You also have to paraphrase information. This paraphrase information could come from the documents, or you can also paraphrase the quotes given by the person you interviewed. And then of course there are also transitions, because you need to jump from one idea to the other. Okay, now how are you going to prioritize the paragraphs? So significant supporting facts are placed in order of importance. Remember, if you are following the inverted pyramid structure, you actually arrange the facts from the most important to the least important facts. And then you include the strongest quotes higher than peripheral or paraphrase quotes. So in the news structure, usually you start giving a quote or writing a quote in the third or fourth paragraph. So make sure that that quote is the most important quote that you got from the interview. Okay, so how do you organize the story? So after your lead, you will need to add necessary background to the story. Remember what I said earlier, the background gives a clearer view on the part of the reader so that they would understand the topic or the issue better. Now, you can ask the question, is there important information that the reader needs to know from previous reporting? So sometimes you have to go back to previous articles published related to the story. Okay, or sometimes if you're working on a story and you need to make it clearer to the reader, you can provide a background by conducting research or readings about it. Now, what about the length of paragraphs? Actually, there are no hard and fast rules as to how long your paragraphs should be in a news story. But I think it all depends on the importance of the story. If you think that it is a banner story material, okay, then perhaps it should be longer than the other articles. But if you think that the story is a minor one, perhaps you can have a shorter article. Now, you have to keep your paragraphs short. 1 or 2 sentences will do, and make each of your points concise. It's better that you make your paragraphs follow the 25 to 35 words rule. Okay, word rule, because that would make it comprehensible to your readers. And then another one, remember that readers grow tired of big blocks of text, especially when they're already printed. So it's best to break it up a bit. So if you think that your paragraph is too long, then perhaps you can divide it into 2 or 3 sentences. Remember the KISS principle. Keep it short and simple. Now, here is the suggested format of news writing. Okay, the first paragraph is of course the lead. You can have the who and what of the news. You can also have the who, what, where, when, or you can have the who, what, or so what. You can follow any of those formats or any of those types. Any of those structure that I just mentioned. Excuse me. The second paragraph is of course the secondary lead. So those other W's that you did not answer in the main lead or in the primary lead could be answered in the secondary lead. And then in the third paragraph, you may start with the elaboration of your most important W. So what you have discussed or what you have mentioned in the lead or in the secondary lead could be given flesh or additional details in the third paragraph and the next one. Now you can also start giving a quote from the key person involved in the fourth paragraph. Remember, a story would not stand unless there's a quote on it. And then fifth to the last paragraph, you can give the other details arranged from the most important to the least important. So always bear in mind how you're going to prioritize the paragraphs depending on their order of importance. Now, let's try to analyze some news stories here. This is what we call deconstruction. So in the deconstruction, we are actually trying to study it in bits and pieces. Okay, so we're going to analyze it by paragraph. So a news story is made or broken by its angle. This is very important, especially when you're already in the writing part. Make sure that you play up the dominant. Make sure that you are able to spot the best angle of the story. So to choose an angle, we should ask, what is the most striking thing about this story? So remember, there are 5 W's and 1 H. And of course, you will have to ask, what is the most important W in this story? Now, in a straight news, it's usually the who or the what. Sometimes it's the so what. That's the good thing about the AP style. Following the who, what, so what, because you can actually interchange the positions of these 3 W's or the 3 components or elements, and the story will still look good. Okay, so identify specific angle of an event as highlight of your story. This is what you call news within a news. Okay, so in press conferences or in press cons, a contestant for news writing would be chosen or would win if he or she knows how to spot the best angle of the story. So this is the point where you separate the best news writers from those who are not. And then once you find that, the story will write itself. Okay? But of course, it's not that easy to get the best angle. So here is a sample of a news story. So the administration announced on Monday flag-raising ceremony that a new set of school rules and regulations will be implemented in Quezon National High School to address cases of students cutting classes. Now, in this lead, you have here the administration answering the question who, new set of school rules and regulation answering the question what, and of course to address cases of students cutting classes, addressing or answering so what. So what to remember? So leads limited to 1 or 2 sentences are preferred. Although I would have to say that 1 sentence lead would be better. And then most leads start with who or what. Now, let's go to the second part, giving flesh to the body. So, secondary or support lead, 2 or more paragraphs. So it could be an elaboration of your prominent W. So Dr. Felisa Biquevada, Principal 4, made the announcement after several reports from the Guidance Office confirmed that cutting classes have been rampant during the first quarter. So this supports or complement our main lead earlier. And then the third paragraph gives the main source or background of the event. So initial reports from Grade 9 Guidance Office said that there were 200 cases of cutting classes recorded for July, 280 for August, and 301 for September. So this gives the background of why there are new set of rules and regulations being implemented by the principal. So these cases actually triggered it. Now for 4th and 5th paragraphs, we have here direct quotes from the principal. And then for our 6th to the last paragraph, of course this may take several paragraphs. Now what can you add to this story? You can continue with the following details: provisions of the new rules and regulations, when will be the start of the implementation, and of course the punishment to be given to the offenders. Now, you have to frame these matters in news material sentences following the inverted pyramid structure. Okay, so here's another example of a straight news. So the first paragraph, 101 senior students from QNHS took the University of the Philippines college admission test to try possible entry to the premier state university in the country. So in this lead, you have answers to the question who, 101 senior students from QNHS, what, took the University of the Philippines college admission test, what, so what, to try possible entry to the premier state university. And then in the second paragraph, note that the other important W's are here. So what are those W's? You have where, Rodolfo B. Abadilla Hall, Manuel Esenberga University Foundation. When, last August 3 to 4. Okay, now we have here the third and the fourth paragraphs. So these paragraphs give the elaboration of important details. So you are given here the background. So what background we're given here? The subtests, the number of hours to complete the exam, the number of examinees who took the exam, and then how many testing centers are there all over the country. And then for our fifth paragraph, you have here a quote from one of the examinees. And then the last paragraph gives you the date on when the results will come out. Okay, so remember, you have to keep your paragraphs short. You have to limit it to 25 to 35 words as much as possible. Fewer is better. You have also to keep your paragraphs limited to 1 or 2 sentences. There's actually a rule. If you will have 2 sentences, the second sentence should be related to the first sentence, and at the same time it should be shorter. Now each paragraph should contain only one idea. Remember, short paragraphs encourage readers to continue reading. So let me give you a formula that I always give to my students in news writing. 1, 1, 1. 1 sentence, 1 paragraph, 1 idea. And then interview does matter. Quoted statements should always be part of your news story. Now, I'm going to share with you the best practice that we're doing here in our publication, and it's actually using the news story planner. So this is how it looks like. So you start with the writer's name, grade and section, the page section, the topic or the event of the story, the news structure to use, whether they're going to use the straight news or news feature, the kind of lead to use, whether they're going to use the summary lead or the novelty lead, the sources of their news stories, and what type of or what method of news gathering are they going to use. Okay, they can also give the expected number of paragraphs for their story, and then they have to come up with the important details that need to be included in the story. I only have here 8 numbers, but of course it can exceed more than 8. And then of course we have here the people that they need to interview for this article. Okay, there would always be people, whether it's the principal, a teacher, or a local official whom they need to interview. And then they have to know where they can get more information about this article. Maybe they need to do some readings, or perhaps do some online research to get more information, or maybe they need to download a memorandum from DepEd websites. And then we also have here the pre-writing strategies. So they have to know what they need to do before they write the article. And then last, we have an agreement between the news editor or the school paper advisor and the news writer on when will this article or when will the article be submitted. Okay, so here is an example of a news story planner accomplished by one of our news writers. So the topic is about the implementation of campaign against standbys or curfew hours. The news structure to use is straight news. The kind of lead to use is a summary lead. So what are the sources of news stories and the methods of gathering news? So the writer needs to conduct interviews, she needs to download documents and as much as possible include statistics in her story. The expected number of paragraphs is 8 to 10. So then, what are the important details that need to be included in this story? So here are the statements and questions given by the news writer. The basis of the campaign, when did the order take effect, where was there any arrest, what are the violations that would result to arresting, the tambays, how many tambays were caught, and then what are the effects of the campaign, how does it contribute to the city's peace and order, and an appeal or plea of the Lucena PNP to the citizens regarding this campaign. So all of these details need to be included in the news story to be written, and these details could also be the source of interview questions to be conducted by the news writer. So who are the people to interview for this article? Of course, if possible, the chief of police. And then, where can I get more information about this article? There's actually a Facebook page of the Lucena City Police Station. Perhaps the writer could get some info there and even pictures. And then, of course, the news writer can also interview citizens of Lucena about their reaction on this article. And then here are some of the pre-writing strategies that she will do. So she's going to read FB articles from Lucena City Police Station. She will set an appointment with an official of the Lucena PNP. So there's going to be a letter needed for it. She's going to conduct the interview and she's going to use a voice recorder. She's going to ask for documents if possible, and then perhaps right after the interview she's also going to transcribe the interview, extract the relevant details before making an outline, and then this article will be finished according to her and as agreed upon by the advisor and the editor and the news writer on July 30, 2018. So I think this news story planner will help the writer in accomplishing the story. Okay, he or she will be guided and he or she will know what to do, rather than just assigning him or her to write a story without even giving him or her the instructions and the things that he or she needs to cover in the article. Okay, so, and that's it. Okay, these are the references that I used for this talk, and thank you very much for listening. I hope you learned a lot from this session on news writing. Now, if you have questions regarding this topic, I will be online on the 28th of August. So at 2:30 p.m. we can already start the session for the open forum on news writing. So I hope that you will be asking some questions, clarifications, or if you need more information about news writing, I could be able to answer your questions. So again, thank you and good afternoon.